Yeah.
What did you discover is the danger in being performative?
The stress, your health, your physical being. You find yourself in situations that you don't know how to get out of later in life. And so what tends to happen, you look at other people and you're saying to yourself, why am I not further ahead in life like I should be? And that's nowhere you want to live. You were put here for a purpose and a reason. And you should take your time to figure out your passions and your desires of what you want to do.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dream Leapers. I'm your host, Harriette Cole, and boy, do I have a great guest today. We're going to be talking to a man who I've known for quite a long time, and I met him because he was running the Alumni Association of our beloved alma mater, Howard University, the Alumni Association of New York. He is an incredible representative of our school and of so much more. He has been in New York City for many years and really making a mark in the field of real estate. What I did not know is that he has been working behind the scenes on a book that absolutely shares his personal story, but also a lot about what we might be able to do to tap into the greatness within. So let me tell you, he is Charlie Lewis Jr., a real estate leader, author, and lifestyle visionary who is redefining what it means to truly love the way you live. That's a brand that he has. While Charlie is widely known as an associate broker at Compass in New York City, his impact extends far beyond real estate. Through his brand, Love the Way You Live, Charlie invites people to think holistically about success and how they show up in every area of their lives. He just came out with a book this week. It's called No Apologies, Love the Way You Live at Any Age. This book is really, it touches you deeply. That's what I'll say. I've been reading it. It's a powerful reflection on authenticity, on self-love, self-acceptance, wellness, and intentional living, offering personal insight and practical wisdom. A proud graduate of Howard University and the University of Texas at Austin, Charlie remains deeply connected to his alma maters through leadership, mentorship, and service, reinforcing his commitment to community growth and legacy. I am thrilled to have Charlie Lewis join us today to talk about purpose, possibility, and what it really means to live well. Please join me in welcoming Charlie Lewis Jr.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Harriet. How are you?
Hey, I'm so proud of
Good
you.
to see
You
another face.
book, yes.
Yes, we have a book. I love it.
So as an author, I know what it takes when you're busy in your world and you are busy carving out the time to make a book that's meaningful is
Yes.
not the easiest thing to do. When did you decide that you wanted to write a book and how long did it take to manifest?
Oh my God. It took years.
Yep.
I always knew I wanted to write a book because my father said, who in the family is going to write the book?
Ah,
And I was just like, I'm the historian in the family. I'm the one that's always gathering information about your relatives and all. So I've been gathering just my thoughts, journaling over the years. And I started my brand, Love the Way You Live, 10 years ago in real estate. And it was all about living with purpose, living the way you wanted to live, whether you're into the arts or if you're into style or if you're into fashion. It was centered around that. And with real estate, as you know, so many people come to you with their ideas and their thoughts. And, oh, I want to buy a property here and I want to buy a property there. But then they also come with their problems. So you become their what? Therapist.
yes.
And so with your life and their life, and you're protecting their secrets and all of their information, what I started to realizing over the course of the last 10 years, I'm like, what am I noticing here? Number one, what I noticed about myself was that I was getting antsy and itchy. And I was like, there's something in me that I need to tell. I got too much wisdom out here. I'm meeting too many people, and I need to share with the world the information that I see that's happening. I see people are existing. They're drifting through life. They're not living with intention. They're not living with authenticity. And they get in their mid 50s and all of a sudden they get stuck and they don't know which way to turn. And so when friends come to me and they're always talking to me about everything, what I realized in my journaling is how I pivot throughout my life with all my careers. Mm. And so what I realize now, I love the way I wrote a retreat before I wrote the book, because wow. I was like, I want to make sure that we as a community, and my work, I love the community. I love our community. I love the Howard community, but I love our Black community and collectivism. And I was just like, I have to tell this story. I have to tell my story, and I have to tell the story of how to just basically live with purpose and live with intention so that people can move different and not feel like they're stuck, and there are many reasons for that. We compare ourselves, we write too much down and say we want to do this and we never do it, and things of that nature. So that's how it all began.
And I found your book to be rigorously honest, let's say. I mean, you really do take off the mask and just put it out there. One of the things that you talk about is how many people are performative. It's almost like wearing a mask, and this is how I'm supposed to live. This is how I was taught I'm supposed to live. And so you kind of perform that role. Yeah. What did you discover is the danger in being performative?
The stress, your health, your physical being. You find yourself in situations that you don't know how to get out of later in life. And so what tends to happen, you look at other people and you're saying to yourself, why am I not further ahead in life like I should be? And that's nowhere you want to live. You were put here for a purpose and a reason, and you should take your time to figure out your passions and your desires of what you want to do. We all lived a life that was based off of sometimes what our parents wanted us to do. Yeah. And I talk about in the book how I'm a junior and how my dad wanted me to live the legacy of Charlie Lewis Sr. And I didn't realize how progressive my mother was at the time, because if she was living today, she would be 95 years old. Mm. And when I came home, I was coming home from grad school, and she said to me, like all mothers do, baby, this life is not your life. This is the life your dad built to provide for you. You go do you. And that just took the weight off my shoulders, because I kept hearing, aren't you coming back to Statesboro, Georgia? Aren't you coming to run the business? My dad had 9 different businesses. And so he was like, aren't you going to come back? And I'm like, I didn't want this world. I didn't want this life. This is your life. Statesboro is too small for me. I was always the kid that had the globe, and I would circle the globe and I would point and say, I want to go there, And so for me, when you're performative, you're living the life of someone else and not living your life. And so I want people to live in their authenticity and start living for themselves.
That was such a huge story for you to share. And context, you are one of 6 children, is that right?
One of 6, yes.
The only boy.
Only boy, the baby.
And the baby. I mean, so the pressure on you, and then being junior, yes. I mean, it was set up before you were born. This is who you were supposed to be. This is what you were supposed to do. And, yes, you knew that wasn't for you, but also the emotional difficulty of not fulfilling what your father wanted you to do had to be heavy.
It was very heavy. It was a time when I'm, as a Black gay man, trying to deal with that aspect in the South, of one of 6 children, being the only boy, coming from a religious family of 14 ministers, my aunt being the first ordained minister in the southern state, in Georgia, and my sister being a current bishop in the United Methodist Church. For me to be, I call it a sane individual who can expound joy and love and not hurt and anger. I find that it's the foundation that my mother and father laid for me, number one. And I used that education that they laid for me and that foundation to fight back against the naysayers of how I was supposed to live my life. Because I'm saying, if you've given me this education and I'm a critical thinker here, then something doesn't add up, and let me live my life according to me. But at that time, when you're young, you're still trapped and you don't know how to find your way. And so part of this book that's why I say love the way you live at any age, because I want the younger audience to be able to see that there is a pathway out. And if they don't have a mentor right now, it's okay. It will get better. Hold on. You will find your way. And that's when I take you through the 8 dimensions of wellness throughout the book to show you the way.
Yeah, I like the structure of the book because there's a lot of personal storytelling, but it doesn't end there. In every chapter, there's how you can do it, what you can do. You definitely relate your experiences to what other people may be experiencing, which is very helpful.
Yes.
There are 2 things that you just described that I think are huge things to unpack. One, we talked about a little bit, the fact that your father had a plan for you and it wasn't what you were supposed to do, and you had to pivot and walk away. The other, as a gay man, I don't know which is harder. That might be harder. In the South,
yes,
with this very religious family and all these minutes. So not just religious, but you have members of your family in leadership roles. And sorry, but in the Black church, it's conservative and largely anti-gay sentiment. Even now, when there's more openness, the sentiment is still largely anti-gay, I think.
Yeah.
When did you come out? How did you come out? How in the world did your family react to that?
Yeah, I know. I came out when I was at Howard. But not out. Out away from Georgia, in DC. I found a community in DC that was welcoming of myself. And I basically met Rochelle Reed, which I wrote about in the book. And he was kind of like my mentor. And he showed me the way. It was similar to my father. My father used to say, if you want to be successful, then he would drive us through the country club neighborhood and say, well, this is how you need to live. You need to work hard so you can live here. Or then he would take us through the projects and say, well, if you don't work hard, you're going to be this. So it was kind of like when I met Rochelle, he was like, well, do you want to, and he took me to a party where it was all these professional Black gay men up the Gold Coast on 16th Street, and everybody know DC. And I was blown away because I was just like, I had never seen that many Black men, and that many Black men that just looked like every regular Black man. And then he took me to the club and he said, do you want to be a club kid or do you want to be a professional man who happens to be gay? And I said, I choose that.
So this person who you met, what was who was he?
Rochelle Reed, he was just a guy that I met, a gay guy that I met, when I was out. And we took a liking to each other, and then nothing was there. But the bottom line is, and he was like, I'm going to mentor you. You are in the gay community back then, especially the older gays were more of community, and they would bring you in. It was almost like they call it almost like a mother, son, father relationship. And so you build this family, almost like in the ballroom culture when they have a mother and all that kind of stuff. And so
what we saw in Pose, for people who who may not know what you're
No,
talking about. You
exactly.
certainly got to see that.
And so you build this community because the community is what you needed, especially in the 80s when you could have been kicked out the house or you could have been ostracized by friends and relatives and all the things. So you gravitated to that. Something that a lot of kids don't do today because outwardly it looks like everybody is all accepting, but really society still hasn't progressed. Like you said, there's still some anti-gay sentiment out there, whether it be in the church or in just the social settings. But yeah, so I built that community. And with that community, it allowed me to, know who I was, get a chance to figure out who I was, understand and know that everybody didn't grow up this way. I was fortunate enough to leave a small little town where I saw nobody, didn't know anybody that was like me, to come to DC and then to be in a place like this. That was a savior for me.
That's powerful. Hey guys, this is Dream Leapers with Harriette Cole. I am talking to Charlie Lewis Jr. He is the author of No Apologies, Love the Way You Live at Any Age. And I love the at any age part, Charlie, because sometimes, and you write about this in the book, sometimes people can feel like, oh, it's too late for me.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever they're going through, that there are changes. And I think in our culture right now, I personally know many people who have had to pivot not by their choice. Last year was a rough year. A lot of people lost their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have just had many experiences that meant what life was like and what life is like now is very different, and they've had to make choices. And you write in your book about whether it is your choice that your life has changed or circumstances, know that it is not too late for you to take a step that could be for the better. And you even talk about, just in terms of financial wellness, that's one of the 8 areas that you cover. Even if you don't have anything, even if you are broke, that does not mean this is a time to give up, because there's something good that could be right around the corner. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is knowing that we all have the ability to use our creative gifts and our talents that was given to us. Sometimes they get stifled because we get into a job where we don't use those gifts. And so we get a constant check. And so we're just working basically for the check. And then sometime, as you stated, I put in the book that sometime that becomes upended. And we all know in the last 2 to 3 years, the economy has been very tight. There's not many jobs out there. And a lot of people face ageism when you get in your 50s. And so you're saying to yourself, how do I reinvent myself at this late point in time? Well, my dad, one of the things that he did stress was that I'm giving you this education for you really to go work for yourself, not to go work for anyone else. So you can, and I'm teaching you basically basic trades of how to work with your hands. So I was prepared if whatever happened. So if I was not to make another dollar doing real estate, at least I know how to paint, or I know how to lay carpet, or I know how to lay floors. Things like that is how I grew up. I grew up with a father born in the 20s. He was from the silent generation, and he made sure of that because he taught that on a daily, of letting us know all the stories and how difficult it was growing up. So I'm very happy for that. But I just find that people don't realize they have so many talents that they are not using. And so in order to turn that into pivot, number one, I always say, find your passion. Number one, if you love to travel, then create a travel group. Create a travel group, get online now, start documenting your travels, start talking about your travels, stop helping your friends out with their travel. Just start that if you were in corporate and now all of a sudden you are not. Because a lot of people were the CMO and the COO, and
Right.
now that phone is not ringing and they don't know what to do with themselves. And they're like, wait a minute, I'm not popular anymore, because it was about the job and
Right.
not about who they were as an individual. So
Right.
I'm really making you turn inward and do a self-reflection. And so at the end of each chapter, I'm giving you a reflection. I'm making you reflect and do a realignment. So then, therefore, you can start to do the work and chip off one thing at a time to really find out what you like to do. Because you might like to make jewelry. You like jewelry. I know you're very into style and very into fashion and arts. And when you think about that, what is it that you could do outside of what you're doing today if you needed to make a living? You have so many other things that you do. You can make that. So I just want people to tap into that. And a lot of us at this age, especially in the Black community, I have to say, we were told if you like music or if you like to dance or if you were like, wanted to write, your mothers and fathers told you back then, you better get a job that's going to pay the bills.
That's right.
So we shut down a lot of the things and a lot of things that we wanted to do because they didn't understand that world, because they couldn't understand that world because of the time that they grew up in. So we don't even understand that we're traumatized.
Yes.
Based off of the era in which we grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were just trying to say how they survived and how they made it. And they gave us the best tools and skills.
They knew.
Right. And so for us, it's time for us to roll, take that layer off and start to really think and dig inward and say, you know what? You're right. I do like music. I do want to learn the violin. I do want to learn another language. I do want to make, jewelry. I do want to make art. How many people that we know, Harriette, like Keith Brown, all of a sudden became an artist, doing wonderful things, used to be this big successful producer at CNN and all the stations, and probably still doing it. I don't know.
Right.
He's doing great artwork, people who make jewelry and the like. So that's what I want us to tap into.
I think it's great. And a story that I remember from time to time because it's just really inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
KFC, Colonel Sanders.
Yes.
Made that business when he was in his 60s.
Yes. Yes.
And it has survived him by generations already. And so there are a lot of examples of business people who got to success later in life.
Yes.
And a very important thing for people to know, because the main point is don't give up. Now I want to go back because you told me about coming out at Howard in DC, which of course the thing about DC, especially Howard, it's so empowering. You just feel, I remember when I went to Howard, I felt like I was in the United Nations of Black people. Like there were people from all over the world. The tippy top, everybody was smart and beautiful and purposeful. And you definitely did feel like you could do and be anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's home. So your family, who was conservative, when did you come out to them and how did they react?
Right. Okay. So the journey there was, when I was at Howard, like I said, I was out, like really inwardly, not out to my classmates, even though a couple of them said they knew. So it is what it is. But there were people that I knew at Howard that were gay that I would see out, when we would go out on the weekends and stuff like that. And then I dated behind the scenes. My sisters live in Maryland, so I would always say, I'm going to my sister's house when I would be going to my boyfriend's place and stuff like that. So it was all of that. But I officially came out when I was 25. It was 1992. And I told my girlfriends, guys, I got something to tell you. And I said, I'm gay. And they said, we've been known, ain't nothing. The next story. And I was like, what? You've been knowing y'all? They were like, we were waiting on you, And I said, look at your friends. And that was my Howard lady friends that my good girlfriends, Monique Parnell, God rest her soul, and Joanne and Fran and all of them. And I remember it was such a relief. It was just like, whoa, And then 2 years later, I told my sisters. And when I told my sisters, one knew, the other ones didn't know. And they were like, okay. And I said, and then I was on a roll because I was just like, I'm coming out this closet. I got to come out. And they said, well, don't tell mom and dad. That'll kill them. And at that point in time, I was just like, they're old. They don't need to know. You live in New York. What's the worry? Like them. And that's the only regret I have in life, is that I did not have that conversation with my mother and father about my sexuality. And I did that to protect, I don't know who, but that's the thing about a lot of gay men. We do a lot of I'd say, suffering in silence, or protecting the feelings of others when others don't really care about our feelings.
Yes.
But we don't want to hurt the family, and we don't want to bring shame to the family and all of that, because that's the kind of stuff you hear growing up, which is why you don't have a lot of people living in their truth, because they hear all of the words matter, as I tell people all the time. And when you say things under the radar, people are like, oh, well, that's not a safe space, so I'm not going over there to talk. So I eventually, my mom,
your parents are both deceased?
They're both deceased. My mom knew at the end, because of my relationship with my my last boyfriend, and she was cool. We didn't really talk about it. It was just there. And it was just, how is Eric? Here's Eric. How is Eric? Here's Eric. And so it was that, but we never did. I never did have that conversation with her. But those are the only two things. Like, that was the only thing that I really was concerned about. Other than that, I really didn't care anymore after I came out. It was just me living and really trying to find out who I was.
Sure.
I always say that gay men, especially in my era, we suffer from gay dating dysfunction. And the reason why that is because we couldn't date until we became 30 years old. So can you imagine? You could date when you're 14, 15, 16, and I'm having to wait until I'm 30 now to figure out what I want in a man. Right. So it's kind of crazy when you think about it. And then in our era also too, you didn't think that you could get married. You didn't think you could have kids. So you didn't build your life around that. You built your life around careers. That's why a lot of men in my age group and category, I think today, are successful because of that. Whereas the younger generation, they're not as, I don't see them being so focused on their career, more so based off of their sexuality.
That's interesting. Life is complicated.
It is.
And especially when there's a lot of judgment about identity, because some people still believe, well, it's a choice. And I know, Charlie, that from just because now I have a child, well, who's a grown woman now, she's 22, about to graduate from college. But but I know from you can often tell a child's sexual identity from a very young age. I've watched, I mean, not always, but sometimes you just know. And I think that because of the culture that we live in now, that even though it's some better, there's still so much judgment that I know it can be very difficult for people if they are not whatever the norm is supposed to be, not just regarding sexuality, but just identity, whatever their identity is, if it's not what is considered the norm where they are, it can be very, very difficult.
Yeah. And for me, I knew early, like I was 8 years old when I first recognized something is wrong, something is different here. I'm not feeling like that, and then I remember I was 13. I remember seeing an episode on 60 Minutes, and they were talking about the Castro district in San Francisco. And I was like, oh, that's what you call what I am. And I was glued to the TV like this because I always watched 60 Minutes with my father, and he would sit behind me, and I was like, I didn't know. I was like, okay, is he watching me? Can he see me? That I was really engaged in that. And that really woke me up. And I was like, okay, now I know the identity of what this is. And that's why I always challenge people on the religious aspect of it, because here I am, an 8-year-old, knowing that I'm different already, not knowing anything about the Bible, even though I was in the church, but I didn't know scripture. I didn't understand scripture. So how was I supposed to know that what they quote unquote say is wrong? But now I know that that's not the truth to that. And God don't make mistakes. He makes each one of us in the presence of him. And you need to figure that out. And you need to live according to what he wants you to do while you're here. So I stress that over and over,
Hey guys, this is Dream Leapers with Harriette Cole. I am speaking with Charlie Lewis Jr., who has a new book. It is fresh out, just came out this week. It is called No Apologies, Love the Way You Live at Any Age. This sense of loving the way you live, which is a brand that you created now more than 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
This notion of really doing that, to be authentically love yourself as you are, is something that people find very difficult to do. People feel that they have to conform to whatever it is, something else, in order to be accepted, in order to feel whole. And you are suggesting it's really the opposite. It is.
It really is. I started this journey when my friend told me, my best friend today, called Touchstone, said, "You're angry." And I was like, whoa, what do you mean? He's like, "You're angry." And back then, this was in the 90s, I didn't know why. And then I started reading. We didn't have the internet, right? But we had Oprah.
You did.
And on Oprah used to have Deepak Chopra on.
Yep.
And I was like, well, let me go to Deepak Chopra and see what he's talking about. And I went to the bookstore and I picked up his first book and I read it and I said, oh, this is me, this is me, this is me, this is me, and this is me. And that's when I realized I am angry because I didn't know it. And I think a lot of people go through life not knowing that they have an issue internally with themselves for whatever reason. And then I come to realize my anger was I was not free. I was not free to be me. I'd lost all my friends at an early age.
Why?
Because of AIDS.
Oh.
Yeah. So I was at an early age, in my 20s, when you're supposed to be out here dating and figuring out life. I'm over here in the hospital and burying people and stuff of that nature. So that was in itself, I'm pissed off about that. Pissed off that I can't just go out and just be a normal Black man in the world. And I'm pissed off because the world is coming at me because I'm Black. I'm in the corporate world at that time and they're discriminating against me. So just all the microaggressions of life was coming at me. And so what did I do? I took the expansionness of my mind from Howard University and I put it to work. And I knew that I needed to be a better person. And in order to do that, I did go back to the church of where I came up in because that's what I knew. And at that time I was in Atlanta and I would go to the men's study and I would change the pronouns from he to she. And that's how I was able to tell my story until I left Atlanta and moved to New York. And I was able to then find a therapist during the course of those years. I kept reading Deepak Chopra. I joined Emmanuel Baptist Church in New York and did the men's retreat. And then I started going there. But then when I got to New York, I was comfortable because I had more of a community and I knew I could then be my authentic self. So I still was learning over the course of the years and still getting rid of trying to figure out why I had this anger built up with me. And during that course, I knew I wanted a Black therapist and I wanted a man therapist who was gay so he could understand and unravel all of the anger that I was going in. So my good friend, Dr. R.G. Allen Wilson, who's a relationship therapist in Philadelphia, recommended Dr. James Taylor in Philadelphia. And he dealt with that issue. Also men who were, prison reform, and things of that nature. And I started going to him. And I would drive down to Philly and stay with him for 2 hours and just talk it all out and just unravel and understand the issues that I had and all the things that I was going on in my life. And I was like, there's no way you cannot do the work on yourself and think you're a healthy individual and bringing your best foot forward in relationships. And I also, too, when I started dating, started looking at my relationships and started figuring out why was I making the same mistake. I was always trying to rescue my partners. And I realized that was not good. And why was I doing that? And it was because of the hurt that I had, that I didn't want them to hurt like me. But I can't do the work. They got to do the work.
Right. You there's a lot to unpack in what you just shared, but part of it, again, the fact that you had the awareness that going to a therapist would be helpful, and the awareness that you needed to find a therapist who understood who you are. I think that is a really important point to amplify here, because I do think today people are a lot more open to therapy than in the past. I definitely think that there's less of a stigma attached to it, especially younger people will go to a therapist. But you still have to find somebody who understands who you are, who is not going to stand in judgment, but who has some awareness.
Exactly.
And so you described that you really did go through that process to find someone who would get you. I'm curious because you grew up in the church with all these folks who are leaders in church. The church is not always a place that says therapy matters at all.
Right. My sister, I will say my sister, who's the bishop, she came to me and she's the one I used to tell everything to. And I was like, you got to hold this. You can't tell the rest of the family, because she was the one that I grew up with. She was 4 years older than me. And she's the bishop in the United Methodist Church. And the United Methodist Church tried to use her as the bishop who was against gay marriage. And she was not against gay marriage. What she is against is the fact that the discipline in the church says that she cannot marry two individuals of the same sex. And so she's upholding her duty as a bishop. She understands her brother's gay. She knows that she sees my life and how much joy and how much community I bring to people. So she understands that. And she's also the one who told me everybody is not put on this earth to procreate. Some people procreate ideas. Some of us need to procreate art. How can you tell the story if you don't have these individuals? Procreation does not mean producing a child, because there are people who are married, straight couples, cisgender couples that are married can't have kids.
Right.
So if it was all about procreation from being able to produce a human, then that's just not what I find to be an accurate description of procreation. So in my family, they know we talk, we have a healthy relationship, because what I do, when I came out that closet, I was not going back in because I did not like it, trying to pray the gay away and all of that. That's the most miserable feeling in my life. And I will never want to go through that ever again. I don't even understand how men hold that, because it's just not a good feeling. And not to be your authentic self and living in your truth. I don't want anybody to have to do that.
When you go back home to your small town, how are you received? Do you feel like is there any expansion of views of how people are viewed, and how are you welcomed by your community?
Well, my Charlie Lewis Sr. had the corner store, and all the businesses were centered around that store. So he was the community civic leader, social leader, the trustee in the church. He built the church, all of the things. So, everybody know Charlie Jr. And I don't go back that much, because everybody, it's in Statesboro, Georgia. So the only thing I have my roots there is just the family house. And so I'm going back there because now I'm in Atlanta and New York. So I do get a chance to go back to just see about the house. And I want to, turn it into an Airbnb. stuff like that. But I see my old friends. But I really, when I left in 85, I left, I was gone.
Did anybody take over your father's businesses?
No, we sold it.
Okay.
Yep, we
Got it.
sold. Mm-hmm.
In your book, I made some notes. You talk about the importance of having a safe space.
Mm-hmm.
What does safe space mean to you on a spiritual level and also a physical level?
On a physical level, like I said, you want to be able to be in an environment where you can have that auntie or that uncle that you can go talk to, that you can, express how you totally feel, because that person has lived in the world, and that person can share their wisdom with you. And I think we can all do that. We can all be that auntie. We can all be that uncle. I had that with my aunt, who was my mother's sister. She was the one that I used to go to when my mom and dad were going through whatever, because I saw a different mom and dad than my older siblings. I saw my father when he was in his midlife crisis. So I grew up totally different from the way they grew up. They grew up very Leave It to Beaver. So when I would say my dad is going through his little, mischief moments, they didn't believe it. So she was the one that I could go to, and I could really lean in and just talk things out, the craziness of school, how I felt about living in Statesboro and how I wanted to leave. And she was the one that took me to Morehouse to see that campus. She took me all around Georgia when she would go to preach in different sermons and stuff like that. So I would always have her as my, person that I could confide in and that was the physical level of safety. From a social, I think you said social, right?
Spiritual.
Spiritual, safe place. I realized that I needed to find a church for me that spoke to me. So when I left Statesboro and I was in the United Methodist Church, I always knew my energy was almost of a Baptist. And so I was like, this Methodist, this refined clap, this is not me. I got more energy than that. So I was like, I got to DC and I went to Shiloh and I went to Metropolitan. And when I got to Shiloh, I was like, this is nice, but it was a little older. And when I went to Metropolitan, I said, hey, okay. And then I saw some of the gay men that I saw at the parties on the 16th Street. So I was like, okay, this is where I need to be. And so the message was there. The message did not say that we were living in an abomination and all that type of stuff. It was very open and accepting. And that's when I realized, I said, oh, you have to find the place and the people, and you have to curate your life, whether that be family, whether that be friends, or whether that even be your work environment and your spiritual place of where you worship and where you fellowship. Because that matters. If you are in a place where people are not positive and not bringing you joy and happiness, always a negative Nancy or whatever, you need to move yourself. You need to remove yourself from that particular space or place.
I love the idea of curating your life.
Yes.
There are many people who feel like, well, I just have to do what I'm doing. Because of fear, because of lack of vision, whatever it might be, lack of resources. But again, I think that has a lot to do with fear. There are many people who say, well, these are the cards I was dealt.
Right.
This is what I have to do. And your description from how to find a therapist to what you were saying just now is, no, I have control here. I can have agency over my life and how I choose to live it. Where do you think that came from? Your understanding that you get to set your course?
Well, as you will continue to read in the book, Harriette, you will see that I don't blame anybody for my life. I was given the life based off of my parents. They did the best they could with what they had. It gave me the solid foundation of letting me know who I was as a Black man in America. I take that with such pride. I take Howard University, going there and being exposed to the diaspora, whether it be Caribbean and African as well as African American, and really understanding, as you said earlier, We were very regional back then. So you really could take on like, people who were from California, people from New York or Texas or Chicago or Detroit. And you put that together. What Howard showed me was that everybody was not monolithic and that you could choose what lane you wanted to be as an African American. And I think most HBCUs do that. At least the large ones I know do that. And so it lets you expand your mind in ways that you wouldn't normally have, I feel, especially when we were growing up at a time with a PWI institution. And so from there, leaving that environment, moving out into the corporate world, going to grad school, starting to travel the world, to see the world, leaving America and doing, programs or studying, I love taking trips to museums because I love to see the culture and I love to see the history. And I became a history buff as I got older. I hated history growing up because it wasn't reflective of who I was or anything that I saw about my life in my community. So I'm always on the go looking for new ideas and new concepts and trying to figure out why was this different from that and stuff of that nature. And that's when I realized is that you have to go out here and set your path yourself. And like I said, I didn't want to be in that closet anymore. I was not going to stay in that closet. Yeah. And once I came out that closet, I was like, hey, let's go, and let's continue to live. And I, like you said, I know a lot of people who feel like they're stuck and they don't know how to move and they're wondering, my life is over, or they get to this point. I'm going to retire. When I retire, I'm going to start traveling. And then they get sick 6 months later and then they can't travel.
So often. It happens.
And then you're like, you waited all this time and now you can't travel and now you got a bad hip. So.
Let me remind folks, this is Dream Leapers with Harriette Cole. We are talking with Charlie Lewis Jr. He is the author of No Apologies, Love the Way You Live at Any Age. Believe it or not, we just have a few minutes left, Charlie. The time zips by. But I want to tell you, so I am making a new version of my first book, Jumping the Broom.
Okay.
And looking at today, looking at how are people getting married in the Black community today? As a realtor, because that is the area that you have worked in for so many years, I'm curious about your advice for folks who are planning to get married. A lot of people blow the budget on the wedding.
Yep.
I'm sure that is not your recommendation.
It's not.
What do you recommend to couples as they are looking to build a life together?
Well, it's funny that you asked me that because I have stopped people from buying homes because I could see that they were not ready to get married.
Ooh.
So the thing is, I think when you do the work on yourself and when you're very clear, when you meet individuals, immediately. My sister always told me, you got the power of discernment. It's a blessing and a curse. And you got to be careful with it. And I get it. Because when you do the work on yourself and stop trying to have, like my friend used to say, what kabuki mask are you wearing? When you pull off all those kabuki masks and start really living in your truth, you see when others are not. And so when people would come to me for consultations, because I never take people out just to take people out, I'm the broker that's going to sit with you. And I'm going to go through, okay, what do you want to do? Where do you see yourself? You're going to live. And then some people say, well, I want to live close to where I work. Well, do you think you're going to be there for 20 years, 10 years? Like, do you really live like that? Or what's more important to you? Do you like to entertain? Do you need a kitchen where you can cook and then entertain? Do you need outdoor space because you like to step out in the city of New York and breathe in fresh air? What is it about you? Or you're in the fashion and clothes, so you really need closet space. That's true to the apartment. And you know how we live in New York. Everything can be cut up and then some things can be expansive depending on where you live and depending on your means. So what I tell people today is I would go down to the Justice of the Peace, get married, and throw a nice party for yourself. And save that money for your first payment on a house. That's my most important thing, because at the end of the day, the relationship is between the individual and the other individual, not for us to see that you guys are trying to come here. Now, I understand everybody want a fairy tale wedding. My mother was not like that with her daughters. She was not that way. She was really about them going and making sure that they were, they had their degrees and they could live on their own. Because my father always used to say, I want you to be able to have the ability to walk out the house if you become in a relationship that was mentally, physically, or emotionally abusive. So I credit him for that. And I see that happening in a lot of women today. And I think men have to just level up and understand that modern women today are not our mothers and our grandmothers, because now they can do the things that that our mothers and grandmothers couldn't do. And so they have to rebrand themselves as a man to meet women today where they are. So if you're not going to put in the work as a man, and if you're not going to be the parents that's going to talk to your sons that the world has changed and you need to present different, you can't present like me. And that might be hard for a lot of men to hear, but men have to recognize my child is not going to meet the same woman that my son is not going to meet the same woman that I marry. You better prepare them with the proper tools so they can be the man that they need to be in today's society. So my advice today is communication is key. It is underrated. People need to do more of it. And you really just need to talk out and go to counseling before you tie the knot as a couple. I say go to couples counseling before, because you will find out a lot about an individual. You need to know the family history. You need to know the relationships. I'm always saying 3 months in, if you haven't met the family, then there's a reason for that. Mm-hmm. If they don't have good friend groups, there's a reason for that. If they're mad at their mother or their father, there's a reason for that. So you have to unpack that, because that's going to carry into the relationship. And the last thing that you want to do is be going to therapy with someone that should have did the work before they tied the knot with each other.
Amen to that. Charlie Lewis, dropping pearls of wisdom. Thank you.
That book, it's all in there.
So much, Charlie. Yes, the book is filled with stories of Charlie's life. And as I mentioned before, information that you can use in your life. The book is No Apologies. Love the way you live at any age. Thank you, Charlie. Congratulations. It's a really good read, too.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you.
All right.
And thank you to all of you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Until next time, have a great day and make it count.